Hello, my name's Stephen from K-Scale Models, and today I'm wanting to do a video on this thing. Now, I'm calling this thing the Beam Cannon Tank. Now, up here you can see it's called 144th Tank 2. That's because this is essentially the Mark II version of the linear tank, so this thing. Or at least that's the lore that I'm using for it. So we have to kind of discuss the linear tank here. Now, as a design, the linear tank has some very nice points to it. Whoever designed this had some understanding of how tanks work and the important things and the little things that people often miss that just add detail to a tank. And I've praised this thing before, it is really nice. But in the lore, they always say that this thing couldn't engage tanks, well, not tanks, mobile suits at the ranges it was supposed to. Its targeting system was radar based, so it had some problems because radar was jammed. Although this can also act as an antenna to contact satellites, which again can be jammed, so it was really struggling. So my idea for this was, well, linear tank, the hull's good. The turret with the weapon, okay, that might not cut the mustard, but, well, you can replace that with a bigger gun. And you can make it more powerful so it can support a mobile suit and taking out other mobile suits. So that's what this is. My idea was to take a linear tank and put a new turret on it. I was originally just going to make a new turret, but then things kind of got out of hand and I started to make a lot more than just, say, a linear tank replacement, or at least an upgun linear tank. This thing is, by the end of it, a whole new beast. But, to be fair, it could be the next tank in the Alliance's development. So, let's just go over this. So, at the front, I've got some tow hooks. So, this is for lashing down the vehicle when it's being transported, either to a trailer or on a ship or something. And this is for lifting. So you often find in tanks there is two, because you don't need like all that much heavy metal to hold a tank down, but you'll definitely need one to pick one up. So that's what these are. They're bigger, they're thicker, and they're attached to, what I'm assuming is behind the hull, some more structural components so it doesn't just bend like a banana. So yeah, that is what this is. Now, moving back, we come to an error that I've made in this, and I'm not going to change it. This design, as far as I'm concerned, is done, and I've noticed it's too late to fix. And I know why it came out like this. So, the driver's hatch here can only open if this turret is spun 45 degrees. Now, there is tanks where the driver does have problems getting in and out if the turret is pointing straight forward or straight back, but it is often considered to be a bit of a design flaw, and designers try to avoid this. The reason is the tank gets hit. The turret was facing forward either because the tank was expecting enemy fire from that direction, or it was just traveling along. And oh no, the tank is on fire. Commander, gunner, they get out. Driver, he can't. They're stuck in the hull because the tank's turret needs to rotate. And if the tank's hit bad enough that everyone's bailing out, the turret motor might not work. Now, there is functions in most tanks where the driver does have the ability to flick a switch and turn the turret to angle that they can get out. But this is a pretty big angle that this needs to turn for the guy to get out. So yeah, I would hate to be the driver in this thing. So that's something I will need to watch out for in future, is make sure that the tank turret does not overhang. The gun will of course have to, but in this case you can see here that gun's high enough up that the tank driver, they can get out fine. There's no need to worry about that. So what happened here is I was originally going with just a standard linear tank turret because, to be honest, this pretty much fitted in there. I measured this up from the Wingdom kit and it basically all fit. It was fine. So Yeah, that was my initial idea. And then I came back and went, you know what, I'm going to change things. And one of the things I changed was I sloped the frontal armor. That's because you generally want to have sloped armor upwards on a tank, because if it's taking any fire that's going, or the armor's going to protect against, it's coming straight in. So yeah, that's why it's sloped up. Now, just on the side, we have lights. So we've just got like main beam and just two lights either side. Just the only reason I did two is just to make it look nice and balanced. But in reality, there's probably only going to be like one indicator or something there. Now, just before we go into the turrets, let's stick with the hull. And I'm just going to get rid of all the B components, just so we can see the hull a bit better for now. So on the side, we've got the tracks, of course. These track pads are very similar to the ones that are used here on the linear tank. Slightly different, but close enough that you can sort of see the lineage. So, come back to this. So yeah, on the sides here, we've got some panels. So this is sort of the panels that you would remove for maintenance. So if you're needing to do anything with the tank, you would just open these up. Haven't done any hinges of that because this is absolutely tiny. These gaps in here are 0.4 millimeters. The reason it's 0.4 millimeters is that's a standard panel width on a Gundam model kit. So yeah, just making them the same size. So let's take away this side skirt and have a look at the wheels. You can see I have cheated. So, being this is designed for 3D printing, I have made the top part of this solid. The reason is that when you're printing this upside down, hence why you don't have a lot of track on the top. So, there is no point, you're not going to see all this area in here. So rather than have a big empty space which is going to have to be taken up by support material you'll have to break off, I thought just make the whole thing solid. It makes it easier to print and just generally less of a pain. So yeah, and of course this is just a little connection point. Unlike the linear tank, which has individual wheels that are each powered, that's a weird thing that the linear tank had, but considering this is all electric, that kind of makes sense. With this though, I've went for the sort of conventional sprocket wheel at the back, a little idler wheel that's kind of now all merged into all this. Yeah. So, anyway, moving on to the rear, I have put little lights there. So these are just like combination brake lights and indicators. They're kind of modelled on that I saw on the Abrams. So yeah, that's why it's done that way. We also have two big fuel tanks in the back. So one of the tricks to get extra range out of your tank is to just add two extra fuel tanks to the rear of it. If these things get hit, they get jettisoned and no one cares. It's just a little trick, and because of course the majority of fire that's going to be coming out of the tank is at the front, if these get hit, yeah, good luck in that. Fun fact, the Abrams fuel tanks are located here and here, either side of the driver, in the front of the tank. I don't recall any instances of these catching fire after being hit. They're relatively safe. So, yeah. Now, let's move on to the turret. So, putting everything back in. On the turret, as I said, we've got these nice slopes here just to deflect fire upwards or just extra mass for something to penetrate. We've got these cuts out here. Now, on the original linear tank, you can see it's got these big bits that just kind of cover the front. There's actually no real purpose to a slab of metal like that. So whenever I've seen that, I thought, you know what, that would actually make a good lifting point. So it's just like this big massive point, because if you're trying to lift this thing, it's pretty heavy at the front with all that armor and where the gun is. So yeah, that's a big lifting point. That's the whole idea there. So as I said, this gun is modelled after the one in the Wingdom. Going back, we've got the scope. Now again, this scope is modelled after the Wingdom's rifle. So the idea I had here was that if it's going to be sort of fighting alongside the Wingdom, then why not make it sort of have interchangeable parts regarding the main gun? Because if that breaks, well, you're wanting to try to keep the logistics all down to something sensible so you can just replace it. So yeah, that was just an idea I had. The sort of mount is meant to be able to rotate. I've kind of tried to indicate it with this, but I'm not too sure how well that comes across. On the side, we've just got a lot of smoke. So with tanks, one of the quickest way to get out of trouble is to throw smoke and then go a different way, like retreat, run off. So that's the idea here is a bunch of smoke grenade launchers, and they'll just create a smoke screen up front and it can run away if it gets into trouble. One thing you don't see on mobile suits too often is some sort of smoke launcher so that if it does get in trouble that it can get out of there. Behind that we've got some storage. So this here is supposed to be some sort of toolbox, so if something breaks it's got a tool. This is storage for the crew's personal gear, so they'll have like tents, sleeping bags, etc. in here, and when like nighttime comes, everything stops firing, then they can pull that out and yeah. And as you can see, it's nice and big, so they've got plenty of room to store stuff. So we've then come on to the hatches. So these hatches are pretty much lifted from the model here. Just checking, yeah, there's slight differences in how it's designed, but it's essentially the same thing. Got the commander's scope here, because that's the gunners. So this is the commander's, and you can see it can turn full 360. It is kind of blocked by the commander's MG. So what my thought is for like crew layout is that's the commander side, that's the gunner side. So if something is, if they're on sort of route march and they just need to have an extra pair of eyes out there, then the commander's got his head out, the gunner's taking over the scope, and yeah, they're on the machine gun. Normally what happens is the loader gets the machine gun. So yeah, this doesn't have a loader, it doesn't have ammunition, it's a beam cannon. So yeah, I've given the commander it. I could always mirror that over and give a similar one to the gunner, but I did change the commander's cupola a little. So you can see here it's not the same, it's raised up a little, and the idea here was that there would be vision slits in here, but they're not modeled because this is 1 to 144 scale. This is tiny. You think this looks big, and whilst yes, the whole thing is big for 144, some of these details are absolutely tiny, so you can't see them. So at the back, I've done some sort of blowout panel. Now, being this is a beam-based weapon, it doesn't have ammunition, but it'll have batteries and capacitors. And if one of those cooks off, yeah, that's going to end someone's day quite nastily. So blowout panel, so if something does go catastrophically wrong, it's vented away from the crew and you don't have explosions within the crew fighting compartment. So yeah, that's pretty much this tank in a nutshell. So I printed one out, so I will cut now to me showing it off. Okay, so this is the tank in question. Now that's all 3D printed out, I'm just going to do sort of side on view, rear, other side, front, yeah. Now you can see the turret is turnable because I've not glued it in, and this is kind of the problem with the turret. So you can see here it's 45 degrees and the driver can get out, turn it anymore, and it starts to obscure the hatch. So yeah, sucks to be them. So yeah, just to go over how this is connected. Yes, this is printed in resin, so there's lots of holes here, but yeah, just a little hole in there lets it all turn. Now I want to go and compare, well, actually before I start, there is one thing that I have messed up when I was printing this out. In here, you can see, maybe, if this would focus, yeah, the tracks at the top there are kind of flat. That's because when this is being printed out, there's a lot of support material on these tracks. Now, this side's worked out fine, but when I was taking off all the supports and sanding them down, I sanded a bit too much. So, yeah, that kind of damaged that. I'm fine with that. I'm not going to go redo this for that. But yeah, that sometimes can happen when you're doing stuff like this. So, I'm now going to start comparing this to what I based this all on, the linear tank. So, let's zoom out a little. So, yeah, this is my 1/44 scale linear tank. I've got the 100 scale one in the box somewhere. So, lengthwise, the two are very similar. If it wasn't for the oil barrels or the fuel barrels in the back of the beam cannon one, it would actually be a little shorter. Widthwise, the beam tank is again a little thinner. This is because the armour on the sort of outriders, sponsons, the tracks basically, is a little wider. Now, this is of course quad track. This is just dual track. So yeah, when you're making a tank, there is absolutely no reason to have quad tracks. They've tried it out in tanks before. It adds more complexity. It doesn't give you any benefit, and the missing track bits in there hurt your off-road mobility. So there's never been any need to do that. Why they've decided to do it in here is because it looks cool. But well, yeah, I think this still looks cool with the way I've done it. But yeah, that's just personal opinion. So there is one last thing I want to demonstrate this with, because as large as these tanks are, compared to a mobile suit, yeah, they're still not that big. So, quick demonstration. Have the two tanks lined up like that, and have the Astray lying down. And the Astray is only smaller than the two tanks by this barrel. If this was two of these tanks, it would be the same length. So yeah, that gives you an idea of scale and just the sheer silliness of the scales in Gundam shows, because you could fit two of these in a transport for one of those. Yeah. Oh well. Anyway, silly logistics aside, I've enjoyed making this. This has been a project that's been going on for many years actually, and I finally just got round to deciding to finish it off. It didn't take much. It was more I was stuck on how to design the tracks, and when I came back to it I went, oh, I'm going to add some detail to this. So yeah. So I hope you found this interesting, and I hope you go away and make your own sci-fi vehicles, because whilst it's fun to make Gundam related vehicles, it's actually more fun to go make your own. So with that thought, thank you for watching.